Well, I'm now joined by Joan Kagwanj, who is the Chief of Land Policy Initiative, an initiative of the African Union, the United Nations, and the African Development Bank. Joan, so much pushback from farmers in Madagascar and, of course, landowners. How do governments reach agreements with farmers and landowners when they've owned these lands for generations?
Peter, thank you for having me. These kinds of situations are quite complex and quite difficult. And so at the African Union level, what we try to advise governments is to really engage with the communities in discussions that look for outcomes which are not so traumatic. But unfortunately, governments do have to engage when it comes to development, whether it is in the agricultural sector or in urban development. But it's to look at looking at the guiding principles that have been endorsed at the AU level, outcomes that do not so much impinge on the rights of communities, that look at the National Development Plan, given that the government has authority to make some of these decisions, but at the same time, to really engage on communities, looking at issues, yes, of compensation, but keeping in mind that land is beyond economic, it's also a spiritual value as well. And so looking at how to be less disruptive to these communities.
Okay, I mean, this is not going to be the first time, of course, that an African country is trying to relocate its capital. If you look at Abidjan in the early 80s, moving to Yamoussoukro, that's the capital, moving to Yamoussoukro. Nigeria moved its capital from Lagos to Abuja. Tanzania has done the same from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma. Are there any examples of African governments that have actually successfully engaged with their people when it comes to such relocation?
I think that it's success comes where there is a plan that engages the communities in helping the transition. So where the transition involves movement of people, it's either in integrating them in economic opportunities that may differ from those that they were engaged in. In this particular situation, we are talking about farmers who may not be as skilled. So obviously relocating them to an area where they can continue rice farming with irrigation is one, but also considering that if it's very far away from where they were living, then they have the social reconstruction to do. So it's pretty complex, and it's always problematic, even for the country, for the cities that you have mentioned. But I think it's looking at the transition period for the communities that are most affected and looking at the alternatives in terms of diversifying their economic opportunities and their livelihoods as well. And these are some of the issues we'll be discussing. I'm in Abidjan right now, as you mentioned, where we are having a conference on land policy in Africa to discuss some of these issues next week. Okay,
Joan Kagwanj from the Land Policy Initiative, thank you very much for talking to us here on Focus on Africa. Much appreciated.